Welcome to Healthy Skeptics, where we take a no BS approach to holistic health.
We're a mother-daughter duo who believe in redefining health by going beyond rigid protocols, detox fads, and restricted diets.
Here, we dig deep into root causes, challenging traditional and holistic medicine, and talk about what really works in today's world to help you feel your best.
Join us as we sift through the noise, tackle myths, and offer real insights into holistic health with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Welcome back to Healthy Skeptics. Hi, Mom.
Hi, how you doing?
Great. Okay, so we're going to jump in. Today, we are going to talk about a case study. So for this particular case study, if you are somebody that is struggling with total loss of energy or a lot of fatigue, hair loss, or digestive issues, this one is a great one for you to listen to. This episode is specifically for you. But also please listen even if you don't have those issues. Okay, so we had a client a little while back. Main concerns. She was, just to give you a little bit of a background, she had multiple businesses, mom of two, overall, like really prided herself on movement and lots of energy, and she was great. What was happening in her life is she was so exhausted, she couldn't even walk for 5-10 minutes without needing a nap. Like her exhaustion was that, it got that bad. Her hair was literally falling out, not just thinning, but bald spots falling out.
Yeah, like clumps.
And she also had a lot of digestive issues, so really severe bloating after eating and a lot of constipation. So really what we want to mention is how we worked with her. We worked with her for about 6 months. And really what we did was we focused on metabolic balance, healing her metabolic function and just making sure that was optimal, so that she could regain all of these functions. So energy, digestion, hair growth. She also did have some hormones that were out of whack, which we'll talk about, but also just metabolism and healing metabolism at the root helped her to start to produce hormones at a more healthy level and then detoxify the ones that were not at a healthy level. So that's her in a nutshell. So just kind of talking through some goals, what we did, since this is a case study, we do have notes today. We didn't want to miss anything as we walk through her case and how we worked together. So some of her goals, and I just want to read them from the notes because we always do goal setting at the beginning so that everyone stays on track. As you work in functional medicine, there's lots of ups and downs as you do root cause medicine. It's never linear. Healing wise, so we want to have goals and what we're really working towards.
It's like milestones, so that we know that we're headed in the right direction, even though you're going.
And also just for motivation. Hey, remember why you're doing this?
Exactly.
It's gonna get better. So some of her goals were, she was getting more and more concerned with perimenopause as she was coming into her 40s. Which I think is funny. A lot of women are concerned about perimenopause.
I think as soon as you hit 40, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling all these things that must be perimenopause. Spoiler alert, it's not.
Well,
it's not. It's not perimenopause yet.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's you know, you are in a new decade of life. Every decade brings different, shifts and changes and all those kinds of things, but it's not, my periods are stopping. When you start to slow that down, that's perimenopause.
Okay, well, we could talk about perimenopause and the definition of, because people will all say, oh, you're 35 and you're in perimenopause.
Yeah.
So we just have a different definition of what perimenopause is, which is understand that, we're going to go off on a tangent here, but understanding that menopause is the one day that it happens where you no longer have it's
a year of no longer having a period.
Well, that's
the actual definition.
Yes, but menopause, you only go through it like it's one event.
It stops. Yes,
and then that's it. Yeah. To confirm menopause, you have to have a year without a period. Yeah, but that's not
which menopause will be the best year of your life.
but No, but what I'm saying is menopause isn't a year-long event.
Oh, no. No.
So
You
perimenopause
stop
is
producing.
not a decade-long event.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at.
Or 20 years. Some people like, oh, I'm 35 and I'm in perimenopause till I'm 55. It's like, no, you're not. Please enjoy your life.
We'll
my
talk
goodness.
about perimenopause and
That'll be a whole
more.
other thing. Okay, so.
But anyway, so she had concerns about perimenopause because she was experiencing what she called hormonal issues, which again, typically energy loss, like digestive concerns, bloating, things like cycles being irregular, I think are flags for people for hormonal imbalance. So that was one, improving her GI issues. She really wanted to be able to eat without bloating, and she really wanted to be able to poop regularly. Great goals.
Like daily.
Great goals.
Very good goals.
And then also you think about it coming from a dynamic place of I owned and have multiple businesses, and I also had the energy to play with my kids and be a mom. And when she couldn't do that, was probably the most debilitating. Was just not feeling at all like she was the person that she used to be.
Right.
And I think that's a very common symptom.
Yep.
So just really getting to the root of mood and energy and figuring that out. And then obviously the hair loss.
Yes.
Restoring hair growth was a big thing because just from a mental standpoint of losing your hair as a woman is horrific.
It is. It really is.
It is one of the worst things, I think, symptom-wise. It's just, yeah. As far as like a confidence and a mental standpoint.
Well, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
When women in hair, it's our thing, you know. Yeah.
I love
As you see me play with mine here to make sure little hairs aren't standing out. But yeah.
So what we're going to do is walk through the key findings. So when we first initially met with her, we got goals, but then we also looked at health history, lifestyle. We have lots of intake forms. Health history, lifestyle, we had labs. So with her, we ran a hair tissue mineral analysis, and we also did a pretty extensive gut test. And we found some of our key findings. Now, with functional medicine, everything is interconnected. The systems all work and operate together. It's how we view the body. It's how everyone should view the body.
Yes.
But
as one big tangled mess, not simple, like siloed systems. Yeah. Everyone affects the other, which is why healing is not linear, you know, because you start to mess with one thing over here and this one over here is like, oh, well, that's different. I'm going to communicate something to you.
Yeah.
So
from her case, we pulled out quite a few key findings. And again, as we walk through these, understanding that all the systems are connected. So there's a lot of overlap. But the main ones, the first one that we saw was on her hair tissue mineral analysis. She had a pretty wicked, what we call calcium shell. So her calcium was very elevated, and especially in ratio or in relationship to some of her other minerals like phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, and sodium.
Should we talk about it for a second, what that calcium shell is and its
I
purpose?
was going to. That's in my notes.
Oh, well, I can't see the notes. I have no idea where you're going. But yeah,
the calcium shell is a really cool phenomenon.
It is very cool.
I think.
I was going to say, it's one of those things where, again, our bodies do the work. They actually do what they're supposed to do, even though we feel uncomfortable. And this is one of those cases where it's a protection mechanism, and our body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, but we are very uncomfortable with the result of that process. So calcium shell happens when and in response to trauma and or excessive chronic stress. It's a defense mechanism from the body. So calcium is what we call a sedative mineral. It slows everything down. When we are stressed, we're in a state of chronic stress or we're experiencing trauma, and usually trauma can be one episode of trauma, but it can also be a longer period of experienced trauma. We see calcium shells a lot with women that had alcoholic parents, so in childhood, things of that nature. So it doesn't just have to be one traumatic event. But we do see it then too.
But we do see it then too. Absolutely.
Traumatic event. Also, traumatic illnesses. I mean, they're all, it's, if you think about your body trying to recover from something.
Yeah. So, yeah. And in stress, any stressor, these types of stressors, we burn through our minerals, our resources very quickly. So what calcium does, what our body does, is pulls calcium from the bone, which is where our calcium, majority of our calcium is, puts it into our blood, our tissues, and it starts to form a shell around our cells to prevent permeability, to prevent mineral loss, resource loss. Short term, this is great because, again, we want to protect our resources. But when we get into a situation where, again, the trauma, we never work through that trauma, there's also chronic stress. So we're constantly feeding our body that information that it needs protection. We get this calcium shell. And now why this is important is calcium is a sedative mineral, slows everything down. And this shell that calcium creates around the cell, while we don't want to lose minerals, our cells actually should have some form of permeability. Minerals and resources and things like glucose and different
potassium and sodium
different
need to move in and
elements
out.
need to move in and out. So this shell prevents movement, which is important because when we think about what needs to get, things can't get out of the shell, but things can't get in.
Yeah.
So when we think about things like glucose, energy, that needs to get in the cell, it can't. Thyroid hormone needs to get in the cell, it can't. Potassium, sodium needs to get in and out of the cell, it can't. And we start to really feel the effects of a slowed down metabolic function, lower energy, less resources, so on and so forth. And then this also, high calcium in the tissue and the blood can lead to things like kidney stones. Calcium, that calcium deposits places where calcium shouldn't be. Heart issues, because now we have calcium is responsible for contracting muscles, and we have a system that's tight, right? So, blood pressure goes up.
You're incapable of relaxing those involuntary and voluntary, both. You think about like muscle cramps when you're trying to work out. There's so many things that people have, like restless leg syndrome. There's one of those diagnoses that I love. So there's just all kinds of things that this particular protection mechanism, your body doing exactly what it was created to do and it's supposed to do to protect you. It's just that the information you're feeding your body by being under chronic stress is that I'm in a constant state of flight or fight. I am in danger.
I need to protect my resources. So we get more, low energy, weight issues, thyroid issues, blood sugar issues, muscle issues, heart issues. Then
you think about and tie that to digestion. It's just one big muscle that's moving and contracting and trying to. You can't move. It's not pooping. Sorry, I'm thinking of
doing on YouTube on the video, but you're not moving that through. So it creates a lot of constipation. So we can start to see just through this one key finding, okay, that's a pretty big root cause of a lot of the things that she was experiencing. So we had to break down the calcium shell. It was one of our big focuses in working with her.
Right.
So initial steps of breaking down a calcium shell, really you have to go back and go comb through all of the stressors. Now, she was great in that she already, from an external stress standpoint, she was already like, look, I had to pull back on everything. I had to pull back at work. I had to pull back on
she was very fortunate that she had the ability to do that.
So she addressed a lot of those external stressors. But we have to go in and comb through all the internal stressors that she was experiencing. And that's kind of where the next key findings come into place. But then also we had to give her an assortment of minerals and vitamins that help to break down this shell. Vitamin K being a big one that directs calcium to go back to the bone. Magnesium is obviously a big one. We have to be careful with magnesium because she was also experiencing adrenal dysfunction, she'll talk about in a bit. Potassium was a big one to help with the calcium shell. And there's some other minerals and things involved, but we really had to have a big conversation around her nutrition, stress, and then give some supplementation, short-term supplementation to help.
Right. And some of that, we are big on, we're not the functional people that we're going to throw 100 supplements at you, to rebalance things and chase numbers and symptoms. But for someone who is not digesting well, even if you were eating a perfect diet, your body is not absorbing those minerals. So while we fix, again, this is that interconnectedness, but it's like you have to have some support there in order to be able to fix the downstream reasons why you're not absorbing. So at times we really do have to utilize some of those supplements, very carefully and strategically in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, which kind of feeds into our key finding number 2, was that she had low digestive capacity. So she was not breaking down her food well. Now, this may be a great time to add that this particular client was a lifelong vegetarian, vegan turned vegetarian, but still pretty strict on the animal protein and where she was getting her protein sources from. This made this a lot more challenging because a lot of these things can stem from a lack of protein and minerals and nutrients in the diet that we get from an animal protein diet. So
I was going to say, specific minerals and amino acids and things that come from animal protein specifically.
So one of her things is she definitely had digestive dysfunction. So she had low hydrochloric acid, so HCl, which helps to actually break down the food that we're eating, which puts a lot of stress on our system, and then also prevents absorption. And then also she had low secretory IgA, which is essentially, and it's an immunoglobulin that really sets off the alarm system for invaders, for things we don't want. And so her first line of defense was pretty much non-existent, which was really creating a situation where her immune system was overactive. Because they
if you think about like your first line of defense isn't there, like the first guys at the gate aren't.
I always
say
they're always like they're the bouncer at the door.
Yeah.
So now everybody's getting in, and the people inside are like, great, we have to flag and work extra hard in order to figure out who's friendly and who's foe.
Right. How'd you know I wasn't going to say that?
I don't know that.
Okay.
But sometimes you don't. So, anyways, so she was having a lot of immune system reaction, which is essentially just a lot of internal inflammation in the gut. So a lot of gut inflammation, bacterial overgrowth leading to more inflammation. Which was a root cause of her hair loss. Yeah. This inflammation slowing down her metabolism again, metabolic function, that energy needed for hair growth wasn't there. And also there's some strains of bacteria that were overgrown in her gut that were actually causing alopecia as a symptom. So these big globs of chunks of hair that were coming up. Yeah. So we definitely needed to heal the gut as well. Her third thing, adrenal dysfunction, thyroid. So she was in a state of like adrenal exhaustion is what we cause, but hate to use the term adrenal burnout or adrenal fatigue. It's not that your adrenals are fatigued. It's that they're just not responding appropriately to stress anymore.
It's the same thing. It's the same as we are as humans. Like, somebody going, mom, 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 and you're just kind of like, I cannot hear you anymore. It's the same thing. It's like they're not. Well, I mean, that's all I can think. It's like go, But it's like I'm sorry, I can't hear you anymore. It's the same kind of thing. Our adrenals just go, sorry, I cannot respond to this anymore. You've been giving me too many messages. Why are you laughing? What?
I think about that as a mom and having Dayla do that to me now, but then also as me as a kid. Yeah. And you making some of the remarks that you made when we were kids. But yeah, so her cortisol was pretty flatlined, which again was leading to this loss of energy. And also we need cortisol for things. People want to demonize cortisol, but it's,
I think people are actually afraid of cortisol now.
yeah, well,
Don't
thank
you-
you,
I mean-
health and wellness industry.
I know, it's crazy. We need it. We need it to get up in the morning. We need it to get our day started. We need it for if we really were in a situation that we needed to run, or think, quickly. It really does focus your mind when
we
it
need
does
it.
like
We also need it for thyroid hormone
Oh, yeah.
conversion. We need it to shuttle glucose into the cell. We need
we
cortisol.
need cortisol.
We need cortisol. We don't need it high all the time, but we need it.
Yeah.
And so hers was completely flatlined and really impacting a lot of her thyroid function. I think this is important to mention too, because her calcium shell was so high. On her hair mineral test, she had one of the worst thyroid ratios I've ever seen. And thyroid ratio on our hair test is something that tells us, it doesn't give a diagnosis of hypothyroid, but it does tell us like,
and is that really necessary?
Well, it doesn't matter, but how the thyroid is functioning.
Right, that's more important.
Hers was so, her thyroid ratio was so high, meaning the thyroid, when it's backwards. So when it's high, that means the thyroid is suppressed and it's operating on a slow waves. And so, again, metabolically, she was just really, really slow.
Pretty much, bottom line is that she used on a daily basis every resource that her body could beg, borrow, or steal.
Yeah.
She wasn't eating necessarily the things that would feed her body. Her body wasn't capable of, even if she, while she was feeding her body, to take the nutrients out and use them effectively. Any signaling that was happening was being stifled by the fact that her cells were trying to be protected against this chronic stress. So, she barely had enough energy to breathe and to pump her heart. Honestly, her body was in that much of a state.
She was feeling that. And then that had this low cortisol had this downward cascade on her estrogen, progesterone, testosterone levels as well.
Well, again, if you think about, your body if your body is running out of resources, it prioritizes effectively and appropriately, but it isn't going to be worried about pooping, because, if you're running, you're not pooping. It's not going to be worried about getting pregnant because God, I can't support a life, much less the body I'm in right now. It's not going to be thinking clearly. So many things. So
we had to take, we did have to take a restorative approach on her adrenal function and get her cortisol response working, which while we were starting on the basics of digestion and working on identifying all of the stressors that were causing her calcium shell and starting to break that down, she did have to focus on some restorative practices for adrenal health. So a lot of what we did here was circadian rhythm and changing up some routines to be really supportive. Light was so important, focusing on vitamin A and vitamin C and more potassium, which we were already doing with calcium as well, to support that. Now, like we said, she made some amazing changes already to her lifestyle to really slow down. Her biggest approach to life was a slow approach, which was such a huge mindset shift.
It was,
from where she was, like really burning herself into the ground. So really focusing on true rest and nervous system support.
I'd also say, though, she was a little bit open to different sources of food as we worked with her. She became a lot less strict and was able to incorporate more things that were more supportive. So so I thought that was, she went through so many mind shifts, so many so much work she had to do internally, like mentally. It was amazing. The transformation was amazing.
Which was, part of the fact that she was a vegan and plant-based and then vegetarian, that was one of the bigger issues as well.
Mhm.
Just from a resource standpoint, she had true protein deficiency symptoms.
Yep.
And muscle breakdown. And, one of the biggest things with protein is it's so important for energy, immunity, muscle integrity, gut health. All of these detoxification, all of these processes need these amino acids from the protein. And she was really suffering from, I have not seen, I think we hear a lot like, oh, eat more protein. More protein's always better. Okay. True protein deficiency like this that you see from clients that have adopted that lifestyle, it really does make a huge difference.
Well, it's like we used to see it sometimes in the ER as well. It was rhabdo. Sorry, I needed to shift. Where the your body was eating the muscle, and then and then it's a release of a protein that is very detrimental to your system. So
she was getting it from two sides too, because her cells weren't getting the glucose from the food that she was eating. Her gut wasn't absorbing the minerals from the food that she was eating. And she wasn't feeding it any amino acids.
Right.
So her body was absolutely in a catabolic state of breaking itself down.
It really was. It really was.
So there's definitely a lot there. So, with all of those findings, after working with her for 6 months, we implemented. We'll kind of give you the breakdown of all of the different lifestyle changes and things that we implemented. Now, this wasn't all at once, just so you guys understand.
Yeah, it did take some time. And honestly, even after graduation, she has continued to improve and continue to work on a lot of these things that Kate's going to run through.
Yeah. So again, her biggest things would say were calcium shell, gut and lack of protein, and then adrenal, burnout,
functions,
if you will, adrenal dysfunction, if you will.
Yeah.
So we'll walk through kind of her final steps or what we did to work through everything. So, she did get supplement support, very targeted supplement support. So we did magnesium. We started slow with magnesium because her adrenals were her adrenal function was low. The more magnesium you use, the more it will suppress sodium levels. And with sodium, we have to be very careful because sodium is important for energy. It's like our vitality mineral. It gives us like that will to live, but also supports digestion and glucose, using glucose efficiently in the body. So magnesium will suppress that if we're not careful.
Right.
But she definitely needed that. So we started slow and worked her up to a good dose of magnesium. She also did get some vitamin K support for the calcium shell and some vitamin E support for some of the internal inflammation that she had going on. We also did and focused a lot with electrolytes for her. So trying to build back up her sodium and potassium. So that was really important.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that was a big one because the sodium potassium pump is kind of one of the most important cellular pumps we have. And so when that's not working properly, that was a big issue with her. And I think, didn't she have heart palpitations when she first came too?
Yeah.
And that was just a lack of potassium inside the cell in order to support that function.
And with her specifically, and again, this is not medical advice for you guys, but with her case, with the calcium shell being that bad and the thyroid ratio being that bad, and thyroid ratio, we measure calcium to potassium. So her potassium is so low, we actually did do a really high potassium electrolyte supplement, which we don't. That's not
typical.
Standard.
No.
But for her particular case, it was definitely needed.
Yeah.
We did do a gut protocol with her at a certain point. So specific probiotic strains that she needed, especially that were interrupting her hair.
Yeah, those were very
growth.
specific for her to help to
Mhm.
crowd out the particular bacterias that were causing the hair loss, or was one of the causes of the hair loss.
And then we helped by doing some whole food supplements as well with cod liver oil and chlorophyll to help with, vitamin A, which was super important for her liver function, detoxification, thyroid hormone conversion, lots of things there. And then chlorophyll to help with detox support.
Because you have to realize too, when you're making these changes in your body, anytime you're doing anything to make shifts in your what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't know, nutrients, minerals, hormones, whatever it happens to be, you need a healthy detox system in order to be able to clear excess. And so, yeah, it's kind of a piece. And we're not, again, it has to be very specific to you what the detox process is. It's not, the latest liver detox on TikTok. It really does need to, you have to really look at what is it I'm detoxifying, which part of my detox system isn't working, and then apply, the resource that you need in order to help that process happen.
Now, this is just an overview of different things that we use to help, but I want to stress that everything is done in progression and in a certain order.
Yeah.
So when we address lifestyle for her, that detox part of her plan was not until later. It was not until her body could actually handle the stress of trying to move a bunch of toxins or hormone overload out of her body. She did not, again, remember, she had no energy. So the very first thing we had to look at was adrenal support, which happened in the form of lifestyle and nutrition before we really got to any of these other things. So some of the big ones for her were blood sugar balance and digestion. We had to get her eating more regularly because, again, her body wasn't getting the resources and energy that she needed.
And eating enough.
And
that was a big thing.
Yeah, and switching up her protein sources.
Yeah.
So we had a protein-focused diet, and with her it was a little bit more, and there needed more intentionality behind choosing her protein sources so she didn't get burnt out on the very few animal protein sources that she was eating. She was, again, more open-minded and experimented with bone broths and beef isolates and things like that.
Yeah, so as long as it wasn't the actual meat. But she would take the byproducts of that, and but that's a big shift,
and it was
for
so important.
It was
for her.
It really made a difference.
So we had to work on blood sugars. That was a huge stressor to her adrenals, and the protein and the breakdown of her body was a huge stressor. And then we did a lot with sunlight at first. So really resetting her circadian rhythm to help support adrenal function. So emphasis specifically on morning sunlight when she woke up, getting out for sunrise, and getting her that therapy for correct hormone support and circadian rhythm and sleep. And then, we did work on nervous system support as well. So this is where we started, guys. We didn't even get into the
we didn't do gut. We didn't do nothing. Yeah.
We did a bunch of nervous system support. So she was already doing less. She was already taking a lot of time off from work. And she actually said when we stopped working with her, the highlight of the whole experience was she actually got to be like a mom.
Yeah.
So she was spending so much time with her kids, and she was like, it's the best part of my day, like getting to actually be and enjoy my children again, which was huge for her mindset wise, nervous system wise, all of these things. Yeah. So, it wasn't like doing less as a mom or laying around. It was actually getting to be more present, actually helped to reset her nervous system, which was really cool. But we also talked a lot about helping her identify stress triggers.
Yes.
And getting to the bottom of
that was a big thing for her too.
Yeah.
Was not understanding it's not about just the busyness. It was really having the time to be very retrospective and understand what those particular particular triggers are.
Yeah. So completing statements like, I wish people would blank, or I think it's rude to blank, or, I work at work, I wish that someone would do this. And then also paying attention to physically how she was feeling in certain situations, like agitated, or how did her stomach feel, or different signs that she was actually having a stress response. So really figuring those out so that we could set boundaries and create more of a system so that when she did start to take on more, she felt like she, had those things really well in place.
Right.
And then after a while of working on those things, and we, again, just introducing minimal supplement support, she started to regain energy. Mm-hmm. We started to see an increase from like 10% to 30%.
Yeah, where she was like, I don't need 4 naps to get through my day.
Go for a 20-minute walk.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
And we were like, okay. So then we started and moved to the gut. So we did a lot of focus on short chain fatty acids. She was really low in short chain fatty acids, which are so important for blood sugar support, brain function, and feeding good gut bacteria and healthy gut lining.
But as I say, and I think some of that,
but
that too is a mindset shift from, starches are bad. These types of foods, we shouldn't be eating them. So that was another mindset shift to understand that no, food is not bad, and it has purposes. And so that was, I think, another big piece for her.
Yeah. So we got deep into starches and short chain fatty acids, and then we also did some medicinal mushrooms to help support
when you
her medicinal mushrooms, not
no, you mean adaptogenic mushrooms. When you say medicinal,
that's what they are.
No, medicinal mushrooms.
I
can't even say it now. That's like, I'm gonna get high. Yes. That's a medicinal. Maybe. But I'm just saying that when you say adaptogenic mushrooms,
they're medical mushrooms.
They're just pharmaceutical grade mushrooms. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, child of the 60s. It's like when you say medicinal.
No, and it's coming back around, so I should probably be more specific. But we did that to support that the inflammation in her gut, but also that immune system support, that IgA, like those immunoglobulins, to try to build those back up.
To get the bouncer back.
Yeah. And then we did introduce some probiotics and things to crowd out some of the
because you have to think too, like, that people think about putting or taking a probiotic, and you have to be fairly intentional about that as well, because there's a balance that has to happen there. And if you're shoving things in that, somebody told you, oh, lactobacillus is a great thing. Well, if that gets a little bit overgrown, it causes issues, and it crowds out something else that could be doing a job. So, it's very intentional when you're trying to rebuild your gut bacteria, your gut flora. You have to be careful in how you do that, because, you can end up with another mess.
Yeah. And then lastly, we came back to do some additional liver support.
Yes, we did.
And she was already boosting amino acids for detoxification process through protein, and replenishing minerals. So she was already doing that work of rebuilding amino acids and replenishing minerals, and she was getting some good fat soluble vitamins, A, D, K, E. From some of our supplement protocol, but also switching up her food. So we just kind of came back around and did some additional support. There were a couple of binders involved. There were some things to help sulforaphane and calcium D gluconorate. Some just things to turn back and help the liver get rid of some of this excess estrogen, and rebalance some of that and just support some of those hormones,
support,
which was the very last thing we did. So she had some really great wins when we left after 6 months. We had about 70 to 75% regain of her energy. So she was doing workout classes she enjoyed again.
That was really fun.
Yeah,
But she really missed that.
She was, walking and doing all those things. She kept a lot of the slower lifestyle pieces in place, which was interesting, but I loved to see. She kind of recognized the way her old patterns were really fueling some of these processes.
Well, I mean, she was like a typical type A. I can do everything. And so learning to hire people to delegate, those were big shifts, in order to, like you say, keep some of that lifestyle going.
Yeah. She had complete constipation relief pretty early on.
Yeah.
I'd say within the first month, bloating relief within the first early on.
Yeah.
Those things, when we were focusing on adrenal support and digestion, those things improved fairly quickly.
I was like, those are the fun things, though. It's like people don't realize how good you feel if you actually poop every day. It was like, holy cow, this is amazing.
And then, the hair growth too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
we had some big transformations over time, and
it was fun in the beginning. She was like, oh, she'd go to get her hair done, and she'd be like, oh, my hairdresser's like, look at all your hairs growing, your baby hairs. Yeah, it was so great.
Yeah, so reinforcing this just kind of reinforces that metabolism and stress, internal versus external stress, is so integral in trying to figure out and correct and heal the dysfunction that you may be feeling, or the symptoms that you may be feeling. So it's really important that we focus on the root causes of all these things, because as you've heard in all of our key findings, there's so many, the body is never just one thing.
Yeah.
There's lots of different root causes.
And everyone's journey may be different, like how, the order of things, or what you attack, or how to do the different phases that we go through. I mean, every single person is different. It's usually it's a combination of the same, the whole body, the same symptoms, really. I mean, not symptoms, same systems. But it's also then how do you, what order are we going to go in to start to attack the root causes of what's going on. Yeah.
So that is our case study for today. We hope that you got some good nuggets out of there. Questions to maybe ask or follow up with, you can definitely ask us.
Yes. We would love that.
But also, if you're struggling with some of these things, I hope you learn some things to bring to your practitioners that you're currently working with. But if you want to check out more resources on how to work with us, you can go to the show notes. There's information on HTMA testing, which is that hair tissue test that we learned so much from with this particular client. Yeah. And then also some programs that help get you started on metabolic health. This is really at the root of this client, but at the root of so many of other clients.
I was going to say, I don't think there's a person out there that comes to us, or that we talk to, whether or not we work with them, that don't have some form of metabolic dysfunction. It kind of drives us. So there's always something to work on in that regard.
So we have resources for all those things for you guys in the show notes. So check those out, and we will see you next time.